This video was recorded in 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic. Hopefully anyone seeing it in 2021 will be safe with a vaccine having been found. In the meantime, for the rest of us back here in the 2020 time warp, maybe this video might provide a few laughs. So I decided after 16 years it was time to open up the joke file. Whoa, there go the moths. Anyway, the first joke in this series goes back to 2004, hence the reference to 16 years in the video title. So I decided to go for a walk the other day, practicing social distance when I came across anyone. I saw this sign on a person's lawn that said, "Talking dog for sale." And I'm looking at the sign, and the owner yells out from behind his screen door, "Are you interested?" And I said, "No, I don't think I'm falling for this." And he goes, "It's on the level. He's out in the backyard if you want to check him out." So I figured, what the heck. I went around into the backyard, and there's this dog lying in front of his doghouse chewing on a bone. And then he drops the bone, he looks at me, and he says, "What are you staring at?" And I go, you can talk." And he goes, "Yeah, I found out I had this gift at an early age and decided that I could help the government. So I went to the CIA and I became one of their most valuable spies for 8 years running. Because nobody would figure a dog would be eavesdropping, they sent me to meetings with world leaders and I would tell the CIA everything I heard. I got a bunch of medals because I saved thousands of lives. But after 8 years, I was getting a little tired and decided it was time to settle down. So I got a job at the local airport doing security, mostly just wandering around suspicious people and listening in, and then telling security what I had heard. Again, I can't tell you how many lives I saved. I mean, I am a hero. I got medals all in the inside walls of my doghouse. I got so many medals I have to start putting them on the outside walls now. And so I'm just looking at him in amazement. And he goes back to chewing on his bone. And I mean, how do you end a conversation with a dog? What do you say? "Nice talking with you?" So I just kind of started backing up and then turned around and went back out to the front of the house and started walking, and the owner yelled out, "So what do you think?" And I goes, "That's an amazing dog, but I'm sure I could never afford him." And he goes, "You can have him for $10. And I look at him and I say, $10? How come so cheap? And he goes, "Him? He's such a liar." Was a young lady standing at the end of a pier holding an anchor, and it was draped around her neck. She was ready to jump in. One of the sailors saw her from shore and yelled out, "Stop what you're doing! I'll be right there." So he ran out to the end of the pier and he said to her, "What do you think you're doing?" And she says, "I got nothing left to live for. My husband just left me. He stole my truck, my dog, and my shotgun. And that shotgun had a lot of sentimental value. It was a wedding gift from my pa. I got nothing left to live for. I'm going to do myself in." And the sailor says, "No, don't do that. You're still young and beautiful. You got a lot to live for." And the sailor goes, "I'll tell you what. We're sailing for Europe tomorrow. I'll hide you on the boat as a stowaway. And when we get to Europe, I'll take you to Rome and London and Paris." And she thinks about it and she says, "Well, okay." So he says, "Meet me here tonight at 7 and I'll hide you on the boat." So 7 o'clock comes, they rendezvous. He brings her onto the boat, makes sure no one's looking, and he hides her on one of the lifeboats and puts the top over her. And he says, "I'll be back in a few minutes with dinner." So he shows up with dinner and he says, I'll be back in the morning to check on you to make sure everything's okay. So in the morning, he shows up. He pulls back the top and says, how was the evening? And she says, that was the best bologna sandwich I ever had. But it's a little lonely here alone at night in this lifeboat. Do you think you could stay with me? And he thinks to himself, yeah. Okay, he says, I'll be back tonight again with dinner. Sure enough, he shows up at 7 p.m. with dinner, and he stays in the lifeboat with her. And of course, one thing leads to another, and they wind up making whoopee. And this goes on for a whole week. Dinner and whoopee, dinner and whoopee. Then one morning, about a week later, he's out doing his duties on the deck, and the captain is walking around the ship, and he sees the lifeboat kind of rocking. And he thinks to himself, that shouldn't be happening. So he walks over, he pulls back the top and finds her there. And he says, who are you? And what are you doing here? And very sheepishly she says, I'm a stowaway. One of your sailors has been hiding me, feeding me, and making love to me every night. And when we get to Europe, he's taken me to Rome, London, and Paris. And the captain just shakes his head and says, sweetie, I don't know who you are or where you think you're going, but this is the Staten Island ferry. This is like a guy, isn't it? Willing to take advantage of every situation, just one thing on his mind. I don't think we can help it. It must be hormonal or something. There's this private plane flying over the Rockies. In it are 4 people: the pilot, the Pope, Bill Gates, and a hitchhiker. All of a sudden, the pilot comes running into the passenger cabin and says, the engine just sprung a leak. We're leaking gas like crazy. We don't have enough to make it. We're going to crash in 5 minutes. He points to 3 parachutes in the corner and he says, he puts one on. He says, every man for himself, and jumps out of the plane. Bill Gates gets up and says, I'm the smartest man in the world. I deserve to live. I created Windows 10. Everybody in the world uses it. And I've got a lot more to give the world. I deserve to live. I'm the smartest guy in the world. He puts on a pack and jumps out the plane. Now it's just the Pope and the hitchhiker. And the Pope says to the hitchhiker, young man, take the last parachute, save yourself. I'm an old man. I think I've lived a good life, and I'm ready to meet my maker. And the hitchhiker says, that's okay, Father, we can both be saved. There are parachutes for both of us. And the Pope looks at him and says, how can that be? And he says, well, Father, it seems the smartest man in the world just jumped out of the plane with my backpack. There's a lady driving through the Arizona desert by herself. After 2 hours of driving in the hot sun, she's completely bored. I mean, you know, you've seen one cactus, you've seen them all. And all of a sudden she passes by a Navajo woman who's hitchhiking. And she says, oh, what the heck, I can use the company. She stops to pick her up. And right off the bat, they hit it. And they're talking and talking. Before you know it, another 2 hours goes by, and they don't even realize it. They've struck up such a good friendship. But every now and then, the Navajo woman glances down at this brown bag on the front seat. And the lady kind of notices her looking at the brown bag, and she says, oh, if you're wondering what's in the brown bag, it's a bottle of wine that I got from my husband. And the woman thinks to herself, you got that for your husband? And the lady goes, yeah. So the woman sits back in her seat, ponders it for a second, and then sits up, turns towards the lady, smiles, gives her the thumbs up, and says, nice trade. It's the day of the big football game, and the 2 interstate rivals. This is traditionally the last game of the year. It's the biggest game of the year for both teams. The stadium will be a sellout. However, for one of the teams, their star player is unable to play because he's academically ineligible. So on the day of the game, the coach, the athletic director, go up to the dean and say, listen, this is the biggest game of the year. There's going to be 100,000 fans in the stadium. We don't have a chance if Billy can't play. And the dean goes, I'm sorry, I can't make any exceptions. If I do, I'll have to do it for everyone. And the coach is, surely there must be something we can do. And the dean thinks for a minute and he says, well, I'll tell you what. Let's go down to the locker room. I'll give him a test. If he passes the test, he can play. So they go down to the locker room. The coach calls Billy over. And he says, Billy, Dean is going to give you a test. He says if you pass it, you can play in the game today. So are you ready? And Billy goes, yeah. So the dean says, okay, Billy, I'm going to ask you a question. Take your time, don't rush. Okay, here's the question, Billy. How much is 2 plus 2? Billy ponders, and then he blurts out, 4? And the coach jumps up excited that he get the answer right. Billy, 4, did you say 4? But before anybody could say anything else, the rest of the team jumps up and yells out in unison, come on, coach, give him another chance. Finally, I have a joke about my favorite elderly couple, Henry and Emma. They've been married for over 60 years, so consequently, they're in their 80s. And because of the advancing age, Henry needs to go to the doctor every 6 months for a checkup. And for the most part, everything is okay, except for Henry's hearing. He's having trouble hearing other people, and in fact, the only voice that he can really discern is Emma's. The voice he's been listening to for over 60 years. So when he goes for his physical, Emma goes with him so she can explain to Henry what the doctor's saying. So they're in the doctor's office, and the doctor is doing this test and that, the knee flex and the blood pressure, and stick your tongue out, say and all that stuff. And after everything he does, he explains to Henry what he's doing, and of course Emma has to repeat it, so Henry understands. At the end of the physical, the doctor says, well, Henry, everything seems to be okay, but I'd like to do some lab work just to be certain. So I'm going to need a sperm sample, a urine specimen, and a stool sample. And Henry's shaking his head. What are you saying? Emma, what's he saying? What does he want? Emma comes over to Henry, puts her hand on his shoulder, leans over and says, Henry, the doctor said he wants to see your underwear. Well, that's about it. I just have 2 thoughts in conclusion. Number 1 is there is a severe blood shortage. The Red Cross has had to postpone all organized blood drives. However, if you're of able body and would like to donate, you can call 800 Red Cross to make a personal appointment to donate. And the only other thing I want to remind everyone, back here in 2020, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Sanitize, don't fraternize. Well, that's about the wrap. So long. Thanks for watching.